In 2020, a small city hall signed a massive public contract in the middle of the night without accepting a single public bid. City leaders claim that a sudden crisis demanded immediate action, allowing them to skip standard legal checks. Overnight, millions of dollars in public taxpayer money flowed out of the city treasury and directly into the bank account of a newly formed private business with no track record. Under standard purchasing laws, local government officials must invite open competition from multiple private suppliers to get the lowest possible price. This competitive bidding process acts as a critical firewall designed to protect public funds from waste and fraud. By forcing businesses to compete openly in the light of day, citizens can trust that their hard-earned tax dollars are spent wisely on public infrastructure and reliable municipal services. However, most municipal legal codes contain an emergency procurement clause designed for rare situations like natural disasters or unexpected public health crises. When a genuine crisis strikes, waiting weeks for public bids could put lives at risk. The law allows city managers to make an immediate deal so essential workers can quickly repair broken water mains, rebuild washed-out roads, or secure dangerous storm damage before conditions get worse. Corrupt officials soon recognize that this crisis exemption creates a convenient shortcut for systematic bid rigging inside local government. By artificially declaring an emergency where no actual crisis exists, dishonest leaders can completely avoid the mandatory competitive bidding bypass safeguards. This loophole allows them to hand out lucrative public work to favored vendors behind closed doors, far away from public scrutiny and traditional legislative oversight mechanisms. In one mid-sized American city, local leadership used this exact strategy on a major IT infrastructure project. The city council suddenly declared an urgent emergency over an old computer network that had functioned without incident for over 15 years. Rather than issuing a standard public request for proposals, officials insisted that waiting even a single week for open bids would cause total system failure across all municipal offices. City leaders used this rushed emergency declaration to award a sole source contract worth $4 million to a preferred local firm. A sole source contract removes every competing contractor from the equation, giving a single business total control over pricing and terms. The city manager signed the financial paperwork immediately, asserting that no other vendor possessed the specific technical capability needed to resolve the sudden digital crisis in time. Internal communications uncovered later revealed that city employees had actually been planning this IT upgrade with the vendor for almost a year. Email records showed that staff deliberately delayed standard maintenance to create the appearance of an urgent hardware failure. The fake emergency was intentionally manufactured simply to bypass open competition, ensuring that no other tech company could offer a lower price for the exact same work. A closer look at financial records exposed a glaring conflict of interest between the city manager and the corporate executives. Public records showed a clear pattern of vendor campaign donations flowing into the manager's political action committee just days before the sole source contract was signed. Tens of thousands of dollars were quietly transferred through private shell companies to hide the direct link between the political gifts and the municipal agreement. This illegal kickback arrangement allowed the favored vendor to charge double the normal market rate for basic hardware installations and software updates. In return, the corrupt public official received secure financial backing for his upcoming re-election campaign. Taxpayer dollars were effectively converted into private political capital, while the lack of open bidding prevented honest competitors from exposing the grossly inflated costs contained within the agreement. The financial burden fell squarely on local residents who paid higher property taxes while receiving broken municipal services that frequently failed. The rushed computer upgrade left city departments with glitched software and frequent crashes, forcing staff to complete daily tasks using manual paperwork. Millions of public dollars intended for park maintenance, public library books, and street repairs were permanently drained to cover the bloated contract invoices. The scheme began to unravel when a quiet finance clerk spotted duplicate billing charges on late-night invoices submitted by the favored vendor. She noticed that the company was billing the city hundreds of dollars per hour for workers who were never present on site. Fearing retaliation from senior city managers, she secretly copied the financial records and mailed the evidence directly to state financial regulators for independent review. State officials launched a formal forensic audit to inspect every invoice, bank statement, and meeting transcript connected to the emergency declaration. Forensic auditors mapped out the entire paper trail from the initial emergency vote to the final check payout. The detailed breakdown revealed that the city had systematically abused emergency procurement exemptions dozens of times over a 4-year period across multiple municipal departments. The forensic audit proved that emergency declarations had become the default method for handing out major city work without public competition. Major infrastructure deals, including street paving, trash collection, and building repairs, were routinely classified as sudden crises to avoid open bids. Local officials had transformed a narrow safety valve into a permanent illegal machine for awarding rigged government contracts to trusted political allies. Without competitive bidding to force prices down, sole source vendors routinely increased their project estimates by hundreds of thousands of dollars above standard rates. Invoices showed charge amounts for simple tasks that were 4 times higher than neighboring towns paid for identical services. City leaders approved every single overcharge without asking questions, using the fake emergency status as an excuse to bypass normal invoice review procedures. When local investigative journalists began filing public records requests to examine the suspicious emergency contracts, City Hall attempted an aggressive cover-up. Officials claimed that internal emails contained confidential trade secrets and refused to release financial details to the public. They delayed records requests for months, hoping that public interest would fade before the truth about the hidden financial relationships came out in the press. Angry citizens gathered at City Hall to confront elected officials during packed public meetings, demanding answers about the missing tax money. Activists pointed to audit findings showing how emergency exemptions were routinely weaponized to bypass fiscal controls. Under intense public pressure and media focus, the unified front maintained by local leaders began to collapse as council members turned on one another to avoid legal liability. State prosecutors presented the findings of the forensic audit to a county grand jury, opening a full criminal investigation into City Hall. Subpoenas were issued for private text messages, bank transfer receipts, and personal calendar entries belonging to top municipal staff. The evidence revealed direct coordination between corporate executives and city administrators to time emergency declarations, specifically when public oversight committees were out of session. The grand jury returned criminal indictments against the former city manager and two company executives for wire fraud and conspiracy to commit bid rigging. Prosecutors demonstrated in court that the emergency declaration was a deliberate criminal scheme designed from the beginning to trick taxpayers. The legal filings established beyond doubt that no true emergency had ever existed when the massive sole source agreement was approved. Following the criminal convictions, state lawmakers passed sweeping legal reforms to permanently close the emergency procurement loophole across all local governments. The new legislation requires independent state approval before any city can bypass competitive bidding rules during an emergency. Local officials must now prove under penalty of perjury that a real crisis exists before skipping open competition or signing high-value contracts with private vendors. The collapse of this local corrupt network serves as a dramatic case study in how administrative loopholes can erode public trust. When emergency rules are abused, statutory protections designed to defend public treasuries are quickly stripped away by corrupt insiders. Without strict enforcement of open bidding rules, municipal budgets remain vulnerable to backroom deals that siphon public wealth into private corporate hands. This pattern of emergency procurement abuse is not confined to one isolated city, but remains a widespread structural challenge across local governments nationwide. Corrupt insiders continually look for administrative shortcuts that allow them to bypass competitive bidding without attracting immediate public notice. Shadowy financial deals thrive in the complex world of municipal purchasing whenever citizens stop paying attention to how emergency authority is used. Protecting public money requires constant community oversight and uncompromising independent audits of every emergency contract awarded by local leaders. Transparent governments depend on active watchdogs who inspect the paper trail and demand full accountability for every single dollar spent. Only through rigorous public oversight can communities ensure that emergency rules protect citizen safety rather than filling the pockets of corrupt vendors.